All right, let's get to your top story today. And I have a question for you. I want to kick this off with a question. Is the United States doing anything it can right now to torpedo peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? I'll just answer it for you. The answer is yes. Just look what happened over the past 48 hours. Chinese President Xi Jinping in Moscow in talks with Vladimir Putin. They spoke for about 4 hours yesterday. Talks continue today. And one of the things they're laying out is a 12-point plan. Chinese 12-point plan for peace in Ukraine. And Putin is on board with this plan. We already know this. They're already open to it. They've publicly said this. So they're sort of working on the peace agreement with Ukraine. And then what's the U.S. and NATO response to this? This is the response. NATO considering deployment of up to 300,000 troops on the border with Russia. NATO announces they're putting 300,000 troops on high alert and, according to Politico, ready to send them to eastern Ukraine with Russia. I don't know. Did you guys sign up for this? Here's the quote from Politico. Politico writes that NATO military leaders are to submit updated regional defense plans. Alliance officials are putting forward the idea that its borders with Russia should be guarded by up to 300,000 troops, the news outlet reports. Not just like on alert. No, you're going there. You will guard this territory. It's not just something you're going to talk about. We will send you there. It's noted that the first echelon of NATO troops may consist of about 100,000 troops, which are already deployed in Europe. So if you think, well, how are they going to get 300 there? Well, they already have 100,000 ready to go in Europe already. And this would be just another 2,000 on top of that. Go ahead, David.
So what you're saying is they're going to put soldiers on the border of Russia in all the NATO countries, but then there's going to be this long void in Ukraine?
Yeah, right. Well, so that's why they'll fast track Ukraine NATO membership, right? Now they're a member, right? Now they're a member. And by the way, can we just stop with the charade? Like, I was thinking about this today. Maybe we need to take a stand. I remember growing up, I was listening to a radio station, and the radio DJ just went on the air and he said, look, I'm never going to play another Milli Vanilli song. It was something like that. Like, he just took a stand. It was kind of a funny moment, right? So the radio station was like, we're done. We're never playing this, again.
You want Redacted to not play any more Milli Vanilli?
I want us to never play Milli Vanilli on this show again. No, what I want us to do is stop pretending that Ukraine has an army anymore. Stop pretending that when we hear about these attacks in Crimea overnight, which we did, and attacks on rail infrastructure in Crimea, that Ukraine is doing it. Let's all just say from now on out, it's NATO. It's NATO and it's the United States that are carrying out these attacks.
In the spirit of not misgendering.
Right.
We are no longer going to misnationalize.
Right.
This army.
Ukraine doesn't have an army anymore. So the idea that they're carrying out precision attacks on rail targets inside of Crimea, on missile depots, give me a break. No one is buying this.
They don't even know how to work the weapons.
Right. They want F-16s that we're going to send them. They don't have an air force. It's just a charade at this point. So I'm done with it. I'm not going to say it anymore. From now on out, it's not Ukraine attack this. It's NATO and the United States attack this. That's what we're doing on this show from now on.
Okay.
So China is in Russia right now talking peace. Let's end this war on Ukraine. That's what they want. Here is the United States response. Again, not just the troops, but here is the other response, which is send them more weapons. Biden administration announced yesterday that we are going to send in Ukraine more weapons. At the same moment they're talking peace, here it is, $300 million new weapons package for Ukraine. Ammunition for HIMARS, 155 millimeter artillery rounds, which we can't even produce anymore and make quickly enough, as Colonel Douglas McGregor has pointed out on our show. Like, where are we going to get this stuff from? Right? All of this, grenade launchers, demolition munitions, and equipment for obstacle clearing, mine clearing equipment. Get it on there. This is in addition to, this is part of the $450 billion aid bill from that Congress already pulled in December. So they've already allocated this money, more weapons.
Is that removing the mines that they themselves planted?
Good question.
Like the ones in the Black Sea? Yeah.
Right, because Russia didn't do that. Like, Russia's running into Ukraine, planting mines, and then leaving.
Right. Yeah, there was also a video this week we saw of Ukrainians planting mines on their own dead soldiers. Saw a video of that this week. So maybe they have to go through and actually clear out their own dead soldiers that are now filled with mines on top of that. and do that as part of the mine clearing operation.
I mean, the rhetoric between the two leaders, President Xi Jinping and President Putin, is NATO aggression. They continue to use this as the reason that they need to make an alliance, and this is proving them right. So there's no way around it. This talking point of NATO aggression continues to be validated.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So 300,000 troops, more money and more weapons the very same day. It's like you're giving them literal verbal ammunition, right?
Yes.
And add on all of that. At the same time they're talking peace in Russia, add on top of that, Tony Blinken, dipshit Tony Blinken yesterday, Secretary of State, making this announcement about China's peace initiative. Watch.
And a ceasefire now, without a durable solution, would allow President Putin to rest and refit his troops and then restart the war at a time more advantageous to Russia. The world should not be fooled by any tactical move by Russia, supported by China or any other country, to freeze the war on its own terms. Such a move would violate the UN Charter and defy the will of 141 countries who have condemned Russia's war in the United Nations General Assembly.
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't that, they can rest up and be stronger argument also cut both ways? Because Ukraine is not winning. And so if there were any ceasefire, it could also, by that logic, work to the advantage of the West to make the weapons they no longer have, to rest the troops, to resupply the ground force.
Right.
So, someone should call them out on the fact that, yes, that's bullshit, what he's saying. It's total bullshit, and it's almost the exact same sentence that John Kirby said over the weekend on Face the Nation.
Oh, the exact same phrasing. Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
So, yes, we call out that it's bullshit. But also, if we're just going to be a member of the press and follow the logic for an exercise in futility, you should say, wouldn't Ukraine also get to rest? Wouldn't people get to stop dying for a little bit? Wouldn't that be advantageous?
Right. So don't fall for it, is what he's saying. Don't fall for this propaganda.
They can't rest because they're going to get stronger. But by that logic, the other team gets stronger too. I mean, I know how the World Series works.
Right, exactly. You get a day off. Oh, now there's a chance that you could actually get your pitcher, the good starting pitcher, back again.
Right.
You get that extra day off thanks to rain. Wow, this changes everything in the World Series.
So only one side rests in a ceasefire, and the other side, gets to pretend they're in that gung-ho movie?
Well, and it's ridiculous because what he's saying is we would go back. The idea is we want to go back to pre-war lines, right? Eastern Ukraine, Donbass goes back to being Ukrainian, and you can continue to kill all the people in the Donbass with continued shelling and carry out your genocide, which you've been doing for 9 years. Continue that, right? That's the goal of the United States, is to move those lines back again. They had a chance to do that. They had a chance to do that back when we were having peace talks and Turkey was laying out that plan. At that point, those territorial lines were still intact. But then the United States, of course, and Britain stepped in and torpedoed that whole peace talk. So here's their second chance at torpedoing peace talks. That's exactly what they're doing. And now they've lost more territory. So if they continue this, the next stage is going to be the capture of Kiev, right? The capital of Ukraine. And then it's game over, and then there's no territory left at all to be talking about.
Which the Western media has told you the war has been in Kiev all along, and it hasn't been. They pretended that it was in the center of the country. And then the New York Times ran pieces saying, look, they're kind of back last summer. Cafes are back open. The ground force has not come there. The attack has not come there yet.
The only time it comes there is when President Biden yeah, exactly. You were on the same wavelength. The only time that the war is there is when President Biden showed up a few weeks ago. Suddenly there were air raid sirens.
When Angelina Jolie was there, they had her running through as well, through the city, out of a cafe and that
Sean
kind of
Penn,
thing.
Yeah, fake. Yeah, all that stuff. So just for some context here, the United States, so we understand what we're talking about here, the U.S. pushed for the death and destruction of Ukraine, using Ukraine as a proxy the entire time. The goal is the total collapse of Ukraine so that NATO will use the land as a proxy for Russian containment.
Which would basically make Ukraine an aircraft carrier for its war with the East.
That's all they want. Case closed. The U.S. doesn't give a shit about the Ukrainian people. If it did, then it wouldn't have provoked a war with Russia. And more context on that, the Pentagon runs 46 biolabs in Ukraine. George Soros, Vanguard, BlackRock now own most of the land in Ukraine. The United States used Ukraine to test out and roll out the first digital ID system that is now trackable and controlled by the government. Microsoft now runs all of Ukraine's government on its servers. The U.S. owns Ukraine from soup to nuts. And there are some nuts that we own now in that country. Total destruction of Ukraine has been the plan. And using Ukrainians was always the plan in order for us to take full control of this country. Remember Congressman Adam Schiff explaining this plan. Watch.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
Exactly. So we've known all along we are fighting Russia. That's the plan. We'll use Ukraine as a proxy so that we fight Russia in that way. And as you mentioned, John Kirby saying the exact same thing this weekend. So as we're talking about peace, and John Kirby comes out and says that, you know, we can't have this ceasefire. It's unacceptable. Any example of this is unacceptable. And let's listen to John Kirby. This is what he said in case you missed it. Listen.
That if coming out of this meeting there's some sort of call for a ceasefire, well, that's just going to be unacceptable, because all that's going to do, Mike, is ratify Russia's conquest to date. All that's going to do is give Mr. Putin more time to refit, retrain, reman, and try to plan for renewed offensives at a time of his choosing. We hope, and we've said this before, that President Xi will call and talk to President Zelensky, because we believe the Chinese need to get the Ukrainian perspective here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that is the plan for Xi Jinping to meet with Ukraine after this summit.
Right.
And what then is the talking point, given that Ukraine is behaving like the battered spouse of the United States, you know, just won't leave them even though they're the ones taking the hits.
Right.
How can China talk them into reason?
Well, accordingly, I mean, we the same thing that happened last time, right, is that the United States and Britain sent convoys to Kiev when they were having peace talks with Russia last time.
Yes, we know this.
Right? So they're doing the exact same thing again. So they're like prepping them, like, don't under any circumstances take whatever China gives you. Like, we got this.
Right.
We've got this. We're going to send 300,000 troops. We're going to send you more money. We've got this. We control you, by the way. All of that money that you keep getting from us will dry up. It will go away if you move any further with peace talks with Russia. That's going to end. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Right. So my question is, what kind of carrot does China have to get them to stop behaving in this way? That just sort of likes the abuse from the battered spouse that just will not leave.
Yeah.
Are these other places as dependent on Chinese products as we are? Like, are they dependent on trade and TVs and electronics and stuff as much as we are, that they could use that?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, everyone is dependent on that, but I don't know what Ukraine's import infrastructure looks like. We certainly know what their export infrastructure looks like. We know that the most important part of their land and territory, the 92% of goods and farmland, is now under control of Russia in eastern Ukraine. The most fertile land in the world is now under control of Russia, and the manufacturing corridor.
And the mines.
Mm-hmm. The minerals.
The resource mines.
So those are now under control of Russia and eastern Ukraine. So what's left of Ukraine is not that attractive. And once Russia decides to move further and continues to takes Odessa and takes any sort of port entry, then there's nothing left. And what would you want with that? So I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know what they get from China from an import perspective that makes it interesting for them. Go ahead, Philip.
What I want to know, like, so you got like John Kirby and all these like politicians talking about this, but what is the narrative end game? So, because they're saying like we're going to defend Ukraine, but if they're saying there is no peace, so it's like if we push Russia all the way back, well then don't they just get to rest and then do it again if we ever leave? So it's like, is it that we just completely take over and then we're right on Russia's border, or is it that we destroy Russia? Because
it's
as long as
change.
Russia exists, as long as Russia exists, then that's still there. But why isn't that part of the narrative? So their narrative stops short of an end game.
Yeah.
They don't mention what the goal is.
Well, the goal, and they will never say it.
You're not supposed to think about
They're
that.
not going to say it. Although Lindsey Graham has said it, it's regime change. They want Putin gone, right? They want a destabilized Russia. The strength now of China and Russia as a hegemony is terrifying to the West. It's terrifying to the United States more perhaps than anything. That's why you're seeing even Europe basically. I want to just play this clip because I think this, not play it, read it, because it talks about Europe right now in a way. And Europe is really sort of identifying itself now with this idea of peace, saying, quietly, let's have this peace because we're being screwed by the United States, blowing up our pipeline, energy crisis. So the United States wants regime change. That's the end game narrative, I think. Here's Walt Zlauto. He's the president of the Western Peace Coalition, writing a great piece in antiwar.com today. He writes this: a year ago, when NATO member Turkey neared a 15-point negotiated settlement, the U.S. and the U.K. each sent a top official to Kiev, not to request, but to demand that Ukraine President Zelensky walk away to keep fighting. That grotesque demand led to over 100,000 unnecessary Ukrainian deaths over the next year. A third of the Ukraine economy vanished, 6 million left Ukraine, and another 6 million have been relocated. Well, now we know the numbers are closer to 300,000 Ukrainian men and boys killed in war, thanks to the United States. So it's over. And the past 24 hours, we've seen Xi and Putin meeting for 4 hours over this 12-part peace plan. Then you have Walt Zlauto saying, once again, I want to quote directly from his piece. He says, once again, it's not about ending a war, destroying Ukraine as a functioning state. And God forbid peace be brokered by our other arch enemy, China, in America's 21st century Cold War that could quickly go nuclear. Outside of the United States and Australia, the rest of the world is cheering on China's peace efforts. Even European NATO countries are likely those silently on board. They're not thrilled about the U.S. blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline and tripling their energy costs to degrade Russia. By preventing a March 2022 peace agreement, the U.S. blew a chance for an agreement that would have reverted to the pre-invasion territorial lines. An easily prevented year of war means any new agreement will likely see the annexation of the Donbas provinces and the Ukrainian oblasts of Kherson and Zaporizhia. Once again, the U.S. has overplayed its hand, ensuring we don't stumble into nuclear war, the utter ruin of Ukraine, and the demise of U.S. unipolar dominance. Ouch. Also, and so I think we can really wrap it up by saying this point that, yes, absolutely, the goal for the United States is regime change. They don't want peace at any measure, and they will torpedo any peace talks that come out of this. It totally weakens their hand and shows how weak the U.S.-led hegemony is right now in this move.
And it's just so easy for blowhards like that to go on television and say that we don't accept peace at this point, because when it's not their family members who are risking their lives. So it's sort of disconnecting us from the fact that we are all humans, that these are families sending people to die, and that peace talks would stop that and curb the bleeding now.
Meanwhile,
it makes sense why. I was going to say, it just makes sense why people always draw the parallel to Rome, because Rome had a very powerful military, and they were so confident that military was going to overtake the world, and they fell economically. So it's like, that's where we are. I mean, we're crumbling economically right now, but we still have the gall to think that we have the military might to sustain it.
Yeah,
it's an interesting time, right? When, the United States is not really able to stand for much in terms of its own fundamentals, like politicians going to jail, financial system collapsing, yet trying to make the case of a dominant world order. So it's a really pivotal time right now.
Backed by a U.S. dollar, right? Yeah.
Right.
Here, take this. It's like a carnival barker, trying to get you to come in and see the bearded lady or something. It's like, come on up, step right up, come in and see the show.